A 6-year-old boy tortured his own mother to death, and nobody could stop him. This is the story of the most powerful Sith Emperor who ever lived. Around the year 5000 BBY, on a forgotten world called Medrias, something was born that should never have existed. The planet sat on the edge of Sith space where dark side energy flowed like poison through the rocks. Local Sith Lord Dramath ruled this world, but he had no idea his casual affair with a local woman would create the galaxy's greatest monster. The child's name was Tenebrae. From the moment he drew breath, something was wrong. Animals fled when he came near. Other children avoided him without understanding why. Even his own mother felt cold terror when she looked into his eyes. By age 6, most kids are learning to read. Tenebrae was learning to kill. His Force abilities manifested early and violently. The dark side called to him like a familiar friend, whispering secrets that children should never know. When his stepfather discovered the truth about Tenebrae's real parentage, the man flew into a rage and attacked the boy's mother. That was his final mistake. Tenebrae snapped his stepfather's neck with a thought. The man's spine broke with a sound like breaking wood, and he collapsed dead on their kitchen floor. But the killing didn't satisfy the boy. It only made him hungry for more. What happened next still haunts the records of that time. Tenebrae blamed his mother for the betrayal of lying about his father. He spent months torturing her to death, drawing out her suffering to feed on her pain. A 6-year-old child systematically destroying the woman who gave birth to him. When she finally died, Tenebrae felt nothing but satisfaction. The boy's hunger for power grew with every passing day. Between ages 6 and 10, he moved beyond his family to the neighboring villages. His methods were simple and terrifying. Submit or die. Those who knelt before him lived as slaves. Those who resisted became examples. Tenebrae would capture defiant villagers and torture them publicly for days. Their screams echoed across the countryside while he fed on their agony like a parasite. Men, women, children, it didn't matter. Pain was pain, and pain made him stronger. His army grew as word spread of the demon child who commanded the Force like a weapon. Some followers joined out of pure terror. Others were drawn by the dark power he radiated. By age 10, thousands served under his banner. They called him Master, and he treated them like tools to be used and discarded. Tenebrae's conquest of Medrias happened one village at a time. His forces would surround a settlement and offer the same choice his enemies always received: surrender everything or watch everyone burn. Most chose to live on their knees rather than die on their feet. The smart ones, anyway. By his 10th birthday, Tenebrae controlled most of the northern continent. An army of fanatics followed his every command, while rival Sith lords watched from the shadows, too afraid to challenge a child who killed without mercy or hesitation. That's when Lord Dramath finally paid attention. Reports reached the planetary ruler about an unusually powerful boy raising armies in the north. Some called him a prophet. Others whispered he was something worse. Dramath decided to investigate personally, expecting to find a talented but manageable young Sith he could control or eliminate. The confrontation between father and son lasted minutes. Dramath arrived with all the arrogance of an experienced Sith Lord facing a 10-year-old opponent. He left as a broken shell of a man, his connection to the Force severed and his mind shattered beyond repair. Tenebrae didn't just kill his father. He destroyed him piece by piece, stripping away everything that made Dramath who he was before delivering the killing blow. The boy wanted his father to understand exactly who held the power before ending his life. With Dramath dead, other potential heirs scrambled to claim leadership of Medrias. Tenebrae's older half-brother, Dramath's legitimate son, possessed enough survival instinct to flee the planet entirely. He knew what his younger sibling was capable of and wanted no part of that war. The local Sith Lords who stayed to fight for control learned the same lesson Dramath had. Power meant nothing when facing something that existed beyond normal understanding. One by one, they fell to the boy's growing strength. Their armies joined his forces. Their territories became his kingdom. By age 13, Tenebrae ruled all of Medrias without challenge. The planet that had once hosted multiple Sith Lords now bowed before a teenager who treated mass murder like a hobby. He renamed his world Nathema and began planning something that would reshape the galaxy forever. The transformation was complete. A 6-year-old torturer had become a 13-year-old emperor through nothing but raw power and absolute cruelty. Every step of his rise left thousands dead and entire bloodlines extinct. Those who witnessed his ascension learned to fear a simple truth. Some monsters are born, others are made. Tenebrae was both, and this was only the beginning of a story that would span 15 centuries and nearly destroy all life in the galaxy. The dark side had found its perfect vessel, and nothing would ever be the same. "8,000 Sith Lords came to what they thought was their salvation. Instead, they walked into the most horrific mass murder in galactic history. At 13, Tenebrae made a decision that would change everything. He traveled to Zeost, the capital of the old Sith Empire, to meet the most powerful being in the galaxy. Marka Ragnos ruled the Sith, commanding respect and wielding incredible influence over his peers. But this teenager had something none of them possessed: raw power that defied explanation. Ragnos saw immediately that this wasn't just another ambitious young Sith seeking favor. The dark side energy radiating from Tenebrae was unlike anything he had encountered in centuries of rule. The boy's audacity in approaching him directly showed either supreme confidence or complete insanity, possibly both. The Dark Lord of the Sith made a decision that would doom the galaxy. He granted Tenebrae the title of Sith Lord, and thus Lord Vitiate was born. The teenager accepted the honor and returned to his renamed world of Nathema to begin the next phase of his evolution. For nearly a century, Vitiate disappeared from galactic affairs. While other Sith Lords schemed and fought for position, he remained isolated on Nathema, studying ancient texts and forbidden knowledge. He built a palace on the exact spot where his childhood home had stood, marking his rise from tortured child to planetary ruler. Young Sith began arriving on Nathema, drawn by rumors of a master who taught different methods. Where other Sith encouraged wild passion and uncontrolled rage, Vitiate preached restraint and calculated fury. His students learned to channel their anger into focused weapons rather than explosive outbursts. This philosophy would define his approach to everything: patience over impulse, planning over reaction, cold calculation over hot emotion. When the Great Hyperspace War erupted between the Sith Empire and the Galactic Republic, Vitiate made a choice that saved his life and doomed everyone else. He refused to participate. While other Sith lords led armies and fleets against Republic forces, he stayed on Nathema and watched from afar. His contemporaries called him a coward, a scholar playing with books while real Sith fought and died for their empire. They were wrong about his motives, but right about one thing. He was planning while they were dying. The war ended in complete disaster for the Sith. Republic forces crushed their armies and scattered their fleets. The Battle of Korriban broke the back of Sith resistance, and survivors fled to the far corners of the galaxy. Ancient bloodlines ended overnight as Jedi hunted down the remaining dark side users. But Vitiate had positioned himself perfectly. While his rivals destroyed themselves fighting an unwinnable war, he preserved his strength and waited for opportunity. When the smoke cleared and the Republic declared victory, he was ready to pick up the pieces. His studies had revealed something that other Sith had never understood. True immortality was possible, but it required a sacrifice beyond anything previously attempted. Draining the life force of an entire world would grant godlike power and eternal existence. The only question was how to gather enough victims in one place. The answer came from the desperation of his fellow Sith. As Republic forces hunted down survivors, Vitiate emerged from isolation with a message of hope. He broadcast across the ruined empire, reaching every hidden enclave and refugee camp where Sith lords cowered in fear. His proposal was simple and compelling. The Jedi were coming to exterminate them all. Individual resistance was futile, but together they could perform a ritual that would unleash the full power of the dark side and destroy their enemies forever. All they had to do was come to Nathema. 8,000 Sith lords answered his call. They arrived believing they were about to strike back at the Republic. Ships from across the galaxy landed on Nathema, carrying the survivors of once great bloodlines. These were beings who had commanded armies and ruled star systems. Now they placed their faith in a young Sith Lord who promised salvation. Vitiate greeted them with ceremony and false brotherhood. He spoke of unity and revenge, of showing the galaxy the true power of the dark side. The assembled Sith Lords nodded and prepared themselves for the greatest ritual in their history. They had no idea they were about to become fuel for their host's apotheosis. When the ritual began, everything changed in an instant. Vitiate dropped his mask and revealed his true nature. The Force poured from him like a tidal wave, overwhelming the minds of 8,000 Sith Lords simultaneously. Their wills shattered under his mental assault, turning them into unwilling participants in their own destruction. For 10 days, Nathema became a void in the Force. Dark energy swirled through the atmosphere while the ritual consumed everything living on the planet. Trees withered to dust. Animals collapsed where they stood. The Sith Lords who had come seeking salvation found themselves trapped in a nightmare of their own making. Their life force flowed into Vitiate like water into a reservoir. Thousands of years of accumulated power, knowledge, and experience became his to command. The combined strength of 8,000 dark side users merged with his already formidable abilities. When the ritual ended, Nathema was silent. Every living thing on the planet had died. Every blade of grass, every microorganism, every Sith Lord who had trusted in Vitiate's promises. The Force itself had been torn away from the world, leaving behind a hollow shell where life could never grow again. Only Vitiate survived, and he was no longer the being who had started the ritual. The ocean of life energy he had absorbed transformed him into something beyond normal understanding. He had achieved true immortality and power that dwarfed anything the galaxy had seen. In that moment, Lord Vitiate ceased to exist. The being that emerged from the ritual simply called himself the Emperor. No other title was necessary. No other authority mattered. He had become the personification of the dark side itself. The Emperor looked upon the dead world he had created and felt only satisfaction. 8,000 rivals had been eliminated. The Sith Empire's survivors would see him as their savior, the one who had preserved their species from extinction. And the Republic would never know what had truly happened on Nathema. He spread a simple lie to explain the devastation. The Jedi had done this. They had destroyed Nathema in their fanatical pursuit of Sith extinction. Let that hatred fuel his followers for the centuries to come. Thus began the reign of Darth Vitiate as the eternal Sith Emperor. He had murdered an entire world to achieve immortality, and this was only the beginning. The galaxy had no idea that its greatest threat had just been born from the ashes of the old Sith Empire. The patient predator was ready to begin his hunt. The Emperor spent 20 years leading his people through space on a journey to nowhere. He already knew exactly where they were going. After turning Nathema into a graveyard, the Emperor faced a problem. The Republic was hunting down every surviving Sith in the galaxy. His people needed somewhere to hide, and the known Sith worlds were death traps. The solution was simple but brutal. They had to disappear completely. He gathered the survivors and made them an offer they couldn't refuse. Follow him into exile or face extinction at the hands of the Jedi. Most chose exile. They loaded their ships with everything they could carry and prepared to leave behind the only homes they had ever known. The exodus began with hope and ended with worship. The Emperor led a massive fleet into the unknown regions, promising salvation somewhere in the darkness between stars. What his followers didn't know was that he already had a destination in mind. Dromund Kaas, a jungle world saturated with dark side energy, waited for them like a hidden treasure. The Emperor had learned the value of patience. Instead of taking his people directly to safety, he led them on a wandering path through hyperspace that lasted 2 decades. Random jumps to nowhere, dead ends and backtracking. Months spent drifting in empty space while supplies ran low and hope faded. The journey broke his followers and rebuilt them in his image. Every day of uncertainty made them more dependent on his guidance. By the time they finally reached Dromund Kaas, the survivors didn't just follow the Emperor. They worshipped him. The planet pulsed with dark side energy like a living thing. Standing before his exhausted people, the Emperor made them a promise. The old Sith Empire had fallen because it was weak and divided. The new empire would be stronger and would eventually return to take revenge on the Republic. Kaas City rose from the jungle like a monument to imperial ambition. The Emperor appeared regularly in those early years, walking among his people and giving direction. His presence energized construction projects and inspired fanatical loyalty. But as decades passed, he began withdrawing from public view. Official proclamations replaced personal appearances. The Emperor was transforming from visible ruler to invisible puppet master. He created the Dark Council, 12 powerful Sith lords who handled day-to-day administration while he remained hidden. These weren't equals sharing power, but servants implementing his vision. More secret was the Hand, a group of shadowy agents bound to the Emperor through the Force itself. These agents received extended lifespans and enhanced abilities in exchange for absolute loyalty. They operated in shadows, carrying out missions while maintaining perfect secrecy about their master's activities. The Emperor's greatest innovation was the creation of the voice. Using forbidden techniques, he could transfer his consciousness into host bodies that could speak and act with his full authority. Male, female, human, alien. The physical form didn't matter. Each voice carried a fragment of his essence and could command the Empire as if he were personally present. This system gave him incredible security. His true body remained hidden while voices handled dangerous situations. When dark side energies degraded a host beyond usefulness, he simply transferred to a new vessel. Over 3 centuries, the Emperor cycled through dozens of voices, while his original form remained ageless and untouchable. Life in the new Sith Empire reflected its creator's twisted nature. Citizens learned from childhood that their lives belonged to the Emperor absolutely. Death in his service was the highest honor. Schools taught imperial history as religious doctrine. The Dark Temple on Dromund Kaas became a focal point for ritual sacrifice, its presence creating the perpetual storms that raged over Kaas City. Slogans like "Glory to the Emperor" became prayers offered to a living deity. Art, literature, music, and philosophy all served imperial themes. Independent thought withered under enforced orthodoxy. But beneath the surface, cracks began to appear. Some Dark Council members started asking uncomfortable questions about their master's true intentions. Darth Nihilus and others began quietly investigating the Emperor's past. What they discovered horrified them. The ritual that granted him immortality had consumed an entire world. These conspirators faced an impossible situation. They served a master who intended to murder them all eventually, but opposing him meant certain death if discovered. So, they moved carefully, building networks of allies while maintaining the appearance of absolute loyalty. Meanwhile, the Emperor turned his attention to the Eternal Fleet. Thousands of automated warships designed by ancient creators and left under the forgotten world of Zakuul. Assuming a new identity, he prepared to take control of these forces. The Emperor found the fleet's home on Zakuul, a world inhabited by nomadic tribes who worshipped cruel gods. He transferred his essence into a new host and assumed a new identity. Valkorion, benevolent ruler of Zakuul, who began uniting its scattered tribes. Unlike his Sith persona, this version played the role of wise protector rather than feared tyrant. Valkorion transformed Zakuul from a primitive world into a technological paradise. The magnificent spire rose from the planet's surface. The Knights of Zakuul became fanatically loyal guardians. Most importantly, Valkorion claimed the Eternal Throne and gained control of the Eternal Fleet. For centuries, the Emperor maintained this dual existence. The Sith Empire knew nothing about Zakuul. The Eternal Empire remained ignorant of the hidden Sith. Two civilizations served the same master while believing they were his only subjects. The Emperor had created backup empires. When the time came to strike at the galaxy, he would command military forces that his enemies couldn't imagine facing. But even this wasn't his ultimate goal. The Emperor's true ambition remained what it had always been since that terrible ritual on Nathema. He wanted to consume all life in the galaxy and become a god of death ruling over an empty universe. Everything else was preparation for that final moment. The Sith Empire, the Eternal Empire, and all the billions of beings who called them home were simply fuel waiting to be burned in the galaxy's funeral pyre. The Emperor started the biggest war in galactic history without firing a single shot. He just whispered in the right ear at the right time. After centuries of building his hidden empire, the Emperor was ready to test his enemies. The Republic looked strong from the outside, but he needed to know what they were really capable of. More importantly, he needed them weakened and distracted while he prepared his final plans. His solution was elegant and brutal. He would trick someone else into fighting the Republic for him. The Mandalorians were perfect for this job. These warrior clans lived for battle and conquest. They had spent generations perfecting the art of war while the Republic grew soft and comfortable. All they needed was the right push in the right direction. Around this time, the Emperor sent a secret agent to make contact with Mandalore the Ultimate, the leader of all Mandalorian clans. This wasn't just any messenger. This was a pure-blood Sith who carried the Emperor's personal authority and a carefully crafted lie. The vision was a lie, but Mandalore didn't know that. He saw himself leading the greatest military campaign in galactic history. He saw his people claiming their rightful place as the dominant force in the galaxy. The images burned themselves into his memory and fed his deepest ambitions. Over the following months, the agent continued to work on Mandalore's mind. Subtle suggestions planted during conversations, dreams influenced by dark side manipulation. Each contact made the idea of war more appealing and more necessary. The Mandalorians deserved better than scraping by as mercenaries and raiders. They deserved to rule. 2 years after that first meeting, Mandalore the Ultimate launched a massive invasion of the Republic. The Mandalorian Wars began without warning as warrior clans struck from the Outer Rim, hitting targets the Republic had never thought to defend properly. The attacks were vicious and coordinated. Mandalorian forces used brutal tactics that shocked Republic citizens who had grown used to peace. Nuclear bombardments turned entire cities into radioactive wastelands. Civilian populations were massacred to spread terror. Ancient rules of warfare were abandoned in favor of total destruction. For 16 years, the conflict raged across the galaxy. The Mandalorians achieved victory after victory, while the Republic struggled to mount an effective response. The Jedi Order was divided about whether to intervene in what seemed like a political conflict rather than a force-related crisis. This was exactly what the Emperor wanted. The Republic was bleeding resources and manpower while learning nothing about the true enemy pulling the strings. Every battle weakened his future target while keeping his own forces completely hidden. The turning point came when a young Jedi Knight named Revan decided the Council was wrong. He broke with Jedi tradition and took command of Republic military forces, bringing his friend Malak and other like-minded Jedi with him into the war. Revan proved to be a brilliant military strategist. Under his leadership, the Republic began winning battles and reclaiming lost territory. Planet by planet, he pushed the Mandalorians back toward their original strongholds. More importantly, he started noticing things that other Republic leaders had missed. Ancient Sith artifacts on battlefields, dark side energy lingering in places where major battles had been fought, references to outside influence in captured Mandalorian communications. Revan began to suspect that someone was manipulating the war from behind the scenes. The war reached its climax at the Battle of Malachor V. Revan laid a trap for the Mandalorian forces, luring them to a planet where he had prepared a secret weapon. The Mass Shadow Generator was a super weapon capable of creating artificial gravity wells that could tear apart entire fleets. Revan faced Mandalore the Ultimate in single combat, while his general Mitra Surik prepared to activate the weapon. The duel ended with Mandalore's defeat and the loss of his traditional mask, the symbol of his authority over all Mandalorian clans. At the same moment, Surik triggered the Mass Shadow Generator. The weapon devastated the Mandalorian fleet and turned Malachor V's surface into a scarred wasteland. The Mandalorian military was broken beyond repair, and their invasion of the Republic was finished. But the dying Mandalore had one final revelation for his conqueror. As the Emperor's mental influence faded with approaching death, he remembered the truth about how the war had started. A hidden Sith master had manipulated him into attacking the Republic. The Mandalorians had been pawns in someone else's game. This confession changed everything for Revan. He realized the Republic faced a threat far greater than the Mandalorians had ever represented. Somewhere in the unknown regions of space, a Sith Lord was planning something that made the recent war look like a minor skirmish. The Emperor watched these events unfold with complete satisfaction. The Mandalorian Wars had achieved all his objectives and more. The Republic was severely weakened after 16 years of brutal conflict. Entire star systems lay in ruins. The Jedi Order was divided and traumatized. Most importantly, the war had created exactly the kind of enemies he needed for the next phase of his plan. Revan and Malak were no longer idealistic Jedi knights following the Council's peaceful philosophy. They were hardened warriors who understood that sometimes violence was the only solution to impossible problems. These battle-tested Jedi would be much more useful to the Emperor than the pacifists they had once been. Their experience with war had prepared them for the choices they would soon face. Their curiosity about the hidden enemy would lead them exactly where the Emperor wanted them to go. The galaxy had no idea that the Mandalorian Wars were just the opening move in a game that had been planned for centuries. The real conflict was still coming, and when it arrived, the Republic would face an enemy that made the Mandalorians look like children playing with toys. The Emperor's patience was about to pay off in ways that would reshape the galaxy forever. Two of the most powerful Jedi who ever lived walked into the Emperor's throne room, planning to save the galaxy. They walked out as his servants. The Mandalorian Wars were over, but Revan couldn't forget Mandalore's dying words. A hidden Sith master had orchestrated the entire conflict from the shadows. The Republic thought they had won, but Revan knew the real enemy was still out there somewhere, planning something far worse than anything they had seen. Revan convinced his closest friend Malak to help him find this mysterious threat. These weren't just any Jedi making this decision. Revan was arguably the most gifted strategic mind of his generation. Malak was a powerhouse in the Force with unwavering loyalty to his friend. Together, they had ended the Mandalorian Wars and saved the Republic. Now they were going to save it again. Their investigation began with the clues they had gathered during the war. On Dantooine, Revan had discovered a star map with references to ancient Sith territories. On Korriban, he had found signs of recent activity that suggested the Sith weren't as extinct as everyone believed. These breadcrumbs led them to Rekiad, the same planet where the Emperor's agent had first manipulated Mandalore. At Lord Dramath's tomb, Revan found exactly what the Emperor wanted him to find: a Sith datacron containing information about Nathima and hints about what had happened there. The datacron was bait, but Revan had no way of knowing that. The journey to Nathema horrified both Jedi beyond anything they had experienced. The planet was completely dead in the Force, not just lifeless like a barren asteroid, but actively void, as if something had torn away the very essence of existence. Walking on Nathima's surface felt like stepping into a wound in reality itself. They found ruins that told part of the story. Ancient records pointed them toward Dromund Kaas as the center of whatever Sith organization had survived the Republic's victory. Revan and Malak left Nathima behind and headed deeper into the unknown regions, following a trail that had been deliberately laid for them to follow. Dromund Kaas was everything Nathima wasn't. The planet pulsed with dark side energy so thick it was almost tangible. Storms raged constantly over the surface while massive cities sprawled through the jungle canopy. This wasn't some hidden refuge for Sith refugees. This was the capital of a thriving empire. Revan and Malak left their fleet at the edge of the system and infiltrated the planet alone. They needed to gather intelligence without triggering a military response that could warn the Republic's enemies about the discovery. Their mission was reconnaissance, not conquest. For months, they worked their way through Imperial society. They posed as mercenaries, merchants, and wanderers while studying the Sith Empire from within. Around this time, an Imperial agent manipulated Revan and Malak into reaching the Emperor, appearing to aid them while actually leading them into a trap designed by the Emperor himself. The guard led them exactly where the Emperor wanted them to go, straight to his throne room in the heart of the Imperial Citadel. Revan and Malak entered the chamber believing they held the element of surprise. Their plan was simple and direct: kill the Sith Emperor before he could react, then escape in the chaos that followed. It should have worked. They had defeated Mandalore the Ultimate and ended a galactic war. One aging Sith Lord shouldn't have been able to stop them. They were wrong about almost everything. The Emperor had been expecting them for months. He knew who they were, why they had come, and exactly what they planned to do. When they stepped into his presence, he was ready with power that dwarfed anything they had ever encountered. The mental assault hit them like a tidal wave. Revan and Malak were both masters of the Force, but the Emperor's strength was on a completely different level. He didn't just overpower their defenses. He shattered their minds and rebuilt them according to his design. The process took seconds. In the time it took them to realize they were in danger, the Emperor had corrupted them completely to the dark side. Everything they had been, everything they believed, everything they stood for was twisted into new shapes that served his purposes. When the transformation was complete, Revan and Malak knelt before their new master as Darth Revan and Darth Malak. They retained their memories and personalities, but their loyalty now belonged to the Emperor absolutely. They would serve his will while believing they were following their own choices. The Emperor had gained more than two powerful servants. He had captured the Republic's greatest military minds and extracted every secret they possessed. Defense plans, fleet positions, Jedi techniques, political weaknesses. Nothing was hidden from him anymore. But the Emperor had bigger plans for his new apprentices than simple espionage. He had learned about an ancient superweapon called the Star Forge, an automated shipyard built by the long-dead Rakata species. This factory could produce unlimited starships and weapons using dark side energy as fuel. The Emperor ordered Revan and Malak to find the Star Forge and use it to build an armada for the coming invasion of the Republic. They accepted the mission without question and departed Dromund Kaas to begin their search. To maintain secrecy, the Emperor told his people that assassins had attempted to kill him but were defeated. The population never learned that Jedi had actually reached the throne room and been converted rather than destroyed. Revan and Malak succeeded in locating the Star Forge in the unknown regions. The massive space station was everything the Emperor had promised and more. Its automated systems could produce entire fleets in weeks rather than years. With this kind of manufacturing capacity, any force that controlled it could overwhelm conventional military opposition. But the Star Forge had an unexpected effect on its new masters. The dark side energy that powered the station also fed their ambitions and strengthened their connection to the Force. Away from the Emperor's direct influence, Revan began to remember who he had been before his corruption. His powerful will, combined with the Star Forge's energies, allowed him to break free from the Emperor's mental domination. Malak followed his lead, and both Sith Lords regained their independence. However, they had been changed by their time on the dark side. They didn't return to being Jedi. Instead, Revan decided to use the Star Forge for his own purposes. Part of his reasoning was strategic. He believed the galaxy needed to be united under strong leadership to survive the eventual Sith invasion. Part of it was simple hunger for power that the dark side had awakened in him. In 3958, Revan and Malak betrayed the Emperor by declaring their own Sith empire in the known galaxy. They used the Star Forge to build a massive fleet and began their own invasion of the Republic. The Jedi Civil War had begun. For 2 years, Darth Revan and Darth Malak devastated the Republic and the Jedi Order. They used tactics learned during the Mandalorian Wars, combined with resources from the Star Forge, to win victory after victory. Thousands of Jedi were killed or turned to the dark side. The war ended when Malak betrayed Revan during a Jedi attack on their flagship. Revan was captured and his memory was wiped by the Jedi Council, who reprogrammed him to serve the light side again. The redeemed Revan eventually defeated Malak and destroyed the Star Forge, ending the conflict in 3956. The Republic survived, but barely. The Jedi Order was nearly extinct, and throughout it all, the Emperor remained hidden on Dromund Kaas, watching his plans unfold with patience that spanned centuries. The Jedi Civil War had actually served his purposes perfectly. The Republic was weaker than ever, and Revan's betrayal had inadvertently delayed the Emperor's own invasion plans. Now he had time to rebuild his strength while his enemies destroyed themselves from within. The Emperor had learned something important from this experience. Revan was too dangerous to leave free in the galaxy. When the time came for the real war to begin, the former Jedi would need to be dealt with permanently. Revan spent 300 years as the Emperor's prisoner, and he used every second to save the galaxy without anyone knowing. His revenge was the most patient act of heroism in galactic history. After the Jedi Civil War ended, Revan slowly began remembering what had really happened to him on Dromund Kaas. The memory wipe performed by the Jedi Council wasn't perfect, and fragments of his encounter with the Emperor kept surfacing. Each recovered memory made one thing clear. The Sith Emperor was still out there, growing stronger, while the Republic remained completely unaware of the threat. Revan made a decision that the Jedi Council couldn't understand. He was going back to face the Emperor again, this time on his own terms. The Council tried to talk him out of it, but they had no idea what they were really dealing with. To them, the Sith were extinct. Revan assembled a small crew for the mission. T3M4, his loyal astromech droid. Canderous Ordo, the Mandalorian warrior he had appointed as the new Mandalore after defeating the previous one. What Revan didn't know was that the Emperor's own followers were starting to turn against him. Darth Vitiate, a member of the Dark Council, had discovered the truth about what happened on Nathema centuries earlier. She realized the Emperor planned to sacrifice the entire Sith Empire in his quest for godhood. Vitiate began building a conspiracy among the Dark Council members, working with Sith lords like Darth Zedrix to find a way to stop their immortal master. The problem was that the Emperor was too powerful to face directly. They needed something to tip the balance in their favor. Revan's return to Sith space gave them exactly the opportunity they needed. Vitiate arranged for Revan to be intercepted before he could reach Dromund Kaas. While there, Revan was ambushed and captured by Vitiate and Lord Scourge before he could pursue the Emperor further. Scourge was the Emperor's personal enforcer, his wrath, but Vitiate had convinced him that their master's plans threatened everything they had built. The fight was over quickly. Revan was powerful, but he was outnumbered and caught completely off guard. Vitiate captured him and brought him back to Dromund Kaas as a prisoner, keeping his identity secret from the Emperor while she decided how best to use him. For 3 years, Revan remained in captivity in Vitiate's stronghold. She used Sith sorcery to torture him, trying to extract information about the Republic's defenses and the Jedi Order's secrets. But something unexpected happened during those long months. Scourge, who was responsible for guarding the prisoner, began to respect what he saw in Revan. The former Jedi never broke under torture. He never begged for mercy or offered to betray his friends. More importantly, he spoke about the Emperor's true nature with a clarity that cut through centuries of propaganda. Scourge's own doubts began to solidify. Meanwhile, Revan's absence hadn't gone unnoticed. Maître Surik, the Jedi exile who had served as his general during the Mandalorian Wars, began following his trail through the unknown regions. She arrived in Sith space with T3M4 and eventually made contact with Canderous, who had been searching for his missing leader. Maitra's arrival coincided perfectly with Scourge's change of heart. The Emperor's enforcer had finally accepted that his master planned to destroy everything, including the Sith Empire itself. When Scourge secretly contacted Maître and offered to help free Revan, she agreed to trust him. The unlikely alliance between a former Jedi a current Jedi, and a Sith Lord formed around a single shared goal. They were going to kill the Emperor and save the galaxy from his madness. Scourge played his role perfectly. He informed the Emperor about the conspiracy against him, carefully omitting his own involvement while exposing Nerys and the other plotters. The Emperor's response was swift and brutal. He summoned most of the Dark Council to his throne room and personally massacred them in minutes, killing both conspirators and loyalists. The purge gave Scourge the cover he needed to free Revan. In the chaos that followed the Emperor's rampage, Mitra and Scourge broke into Nerys' stronghold and liberated their ally. Revan had actually killed Nerys himself during an earlier escape attempt, turning her to ash with her own Force lightning. The three allies fought their way through the Imperial Citadel toward the Emperor's throne room. This was their only chance to catch him off guard while he was still dealing with the aftermath of the purge. The battle in the throne room was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Revan attacked the Emperor directly, using both light and dark side techniques in combinations that shouldn't have been possible. For a brief moment, his raw power actually staggered the immortal Sith Lord. The Emperor's counterattack was devastating. Force lightning filled the chamber, throwing Revan across the room and instantly incinerating T3M4. Mitra managed to cut the Emperor's lightsaber from his hand, giving them a momentary advantage, but it wasn't enough. At the critical moment, Scourge was overcome by a Force vision that changed everything. He saw the future with perfect clarity, and in that future, neither Revan nor Mitra was destined to kill the Emperor. That honor would fall to someone else, a Jedi not yet born who would be known as the hero of Tython. The vision convinced Scourge that this attack was doomed to fail. If he wanted to serve the greater good, he had to preserve himself for the future battle that would actually succeed. Scourge plunged his lightsaber through Mitra Surik's back, killing her instantly. Revan's shock and grief at watching his friend die broke his concentration just long enough for the Emperor to unleash his full power. Force lightning overwhelmed Revan's defenses and left him barely conscious on the throne room floor. The Emperor tested Scourge's loyalty by ordering him to execute Revan. Scourge raised his weapon and prepared to obey, only stopping when the Emperor called off the killing blow at the last second. The display satisfied the Emperor, who believed Scourge had been playing a long game to lure the Jedi into a trap. Instead of killing Revan, the Emperor decided to imprison him. He saw the former Jedi as a valuable source of knowledge and power that could be tapped indefinitely. Revan was placed in stasis aboard the Maelstrom, a secret prison station hidden in an electrically charged nebula. Sith alchemy and advanced technology kept Revan alive but unconscious, turning him into a living battery that the Emperor could drain whenever he needed additional strength. The spirit of Mitra Surik appeared to Revan during his imprisonment, communicating with him and offering guidance even in death. Scourge was rewarded for his apparent loyalty. The Emperor made him the new Emperor's Wrath and granted him the same immortality that sustained the Emperor's other servants. For the next 3 centuries, Scourge would serve faithfully while secretly waiting for the prophesied Jedi who could finish what he and Revan had started. But Revan's imprisonment had an unexpected effect on the Emperor. The mental link between Revan and the Emperor allowed Revan to influence the Emperor's thoughts subtly, delaying his war plans by fostering caution and patience. The result was a 300-year delay in the Emperor's planned invasion of the Republic. Instead of striking while the galaxy was still weak from the Jedi Civil War, he spent centuries building his forces and refining his plans. This gave the Republic time to recover and rebuild, unknowingly buying them the strength they would need for the war to come. Revan had saved the galaxy twice. Once by ending the Mandalorian Wars, and again by sacrificing his freedom to delay the Emperor's assault. His revenge would take 3 centuries to complete, but it would ultimately prove more effective than any lightsaber duel. After hiding for over 1,000 years, the Sith Emperor finally struck at the Republic with the forces he had been building since the Great Hyperspace War. Then, at the moment of total victory, he stopped and offered peace. The attack came without warning. Republic sensors detected massive fleets dropping out of hyperspace across dozens of star systems simultaneously. These weren't raiders or pirates. This was a coordinated invasion by an empire that supposedly didn't exist anymore. The Sith had returned. The Emperor had spent centuries preparing for this moment. His war machine was unlike anything the Republic had ever faced. Fleets of warships, supported by legions of Sith warriors and countless soldiers bred for combat. They used secret hyperspace routes to strike deep into Republic territory while avoiding the main defensive positions. Their first target was Korriban, the ancient Sith holy world that had fallen under Republic control after the Great Hyperspace War. The Sith Armada hit the planet like a hammer, slaughtering the small Jedi garrison that had been stationed there. The message was clear. The Sith were reclaiming everything that had once belonged to them. The Republic was caught completely off guard. For over 1,000 years, they had believed the Sith were extinct. Now enemy fleets were bombarding their worlds while Sith lords led ground assaults against targets that had never been properly defended. The Senate panicked. The Jedi scrambled to respond. Everything they thought they knew about galactic security was wrong. The war that followed lasted 28 years and became one of the bloodiest conflicts in galactic history. The Emperor's strategic planning gave the Sith early victories across multiple fronts. His forces used tactics and weapons that the Republic had never encountered, while his generals coordinated attacks with military precision that came from centuries of preparation. The tides of war shifted back and forth as both sides adapted to their enemy's strategies. The Republic won crucial defensive battles like the one at Bothawi, where Jedi leadership and Republic determination managed to repel a major Sith assault. But the Sith conquered or devastated numerous worlds in return, including the horrific bombardment of Alderaan's forests that turned vast areas of the planet into charred wastelands. Throughout the entire conflict, the Emperor himself never appeared on any battlefield. He operated through his Dark Council generals and the Emperor's voice, one of his prepared host bodies that carried his consciousness and authority. This system allowed him to direct military campaigns while keeping his true form safely hidden on Dromund Kaas. The strategy worked perfectly. His enemies never knew where he really was or how to strike at him directly. His own people saw him as an infallible leader whose plans always succeeded. The myth of his power grew with every victory, while the reality of his vulnerability remained completely protected. As the war entered its final phase, the Sith Empire stood on the brink of total victory. The Republic had been battered by decades of conflict. Many Jedi had been killed in battle or turned to the dark side. Entire star systems lay in ruins, while others had switched sides to avoid destruction. Then came the most audacious attack of the entire war. Darth Malgus led Sith forces in a direct assault on Coruscant itself, the Republic capital that had never fallen to enemy attack. The Sith fleet bombarded the city, while ground forces fought their way through the streets. The Jedi Temple was razed to the ground, its defenders slaughtered or scattered. The sack of Coruscant should have been the war's final battle. With their capital occupied and their government hostage, the Republic had no choice but to surrender. The Sith had achieved everything they had fought for and more. Victory was complete. But then something unexpected happened. Instead of demanding unconditional surrender, the Emperor offered an armistice. After 28 years of brutal warfare, with total victory within his grasp, he chose to negotiate instead of delivering the killing blow. This decision baffled everyone on both sides. Ambitious Sith lords like Darth Malgus couldn't understand why they were stopping when the Republic was completely beaten. Republic leaders wondered if this was some kind of trap, or if the Sith were weaker than they appeared. The truth was more complex than anyone realized. The Emperor had achieved many of his goals from the war, though his ultimate objective was not galactic conquest, but preparing conditions for a dark side ritual to consume all life. Several factors influenced his decision to halt the advance and seek peace instead of total victory. Revan's influence continued to affect the Emperor even after 3 centuries of imprisonment. The mental link between them had made the Emperor more cautious about overextending his forces. He had learned from studying Revan's memories that pushing too hard could rally desperate enemies into a final resistance that might cost more than it gained. More importantly, the Emperor's true goal had never been ruling the Republic. He wanted to consume all life in the galaxy through a dark ritual that would make him a god. A prolonged Cold War with a weakened but surviving Republic would create more fear and suffering to feed into that ritual than simple military occupation ever could. There was also another factor that few people knew about. Unknown to the galaxy, the Emperor had already begun manifesting a second persona, Valkorion, who would eventually rule the hidden eternal empire of Zakuul, beginning his plans there during or shortly after the Great Galactic War. Around this time, he had 3 infant children with his Zakuulan wife, Senya Tiral. Arkan, Thexan, and Valen were born during the final years of the war, and their existence may have influenced his decision to seek peace rather than continue fighting. The Treaty of Coruscant officially ended the Great Galactic War, with terms heavily favoring the Sith Empire. The Republic acknowledged most Sith territorial gains and ceded control of numerous Outer Rim systems. The Jedi were forced to relocate their Order's headquarters to Tython, the ancient homeworld of the Jedi, after the destruction of the Jedi Temple on Coruscant. In return, the Sith agreed to halt further hostilities and withdraw their occupation forces from the Republic capital. The treaty established an uneasy Cold War that would last for years. Both sides rebuilt their strength while officially maintaining peace. The galaxy was divided between 2 hostile powers that watched each other constantly for signs of renewed aggression. For the Emperor, the war had been a complete success. The Sith Empire now controlled more territory than it had in over a millennium. The Republic was weakened and demoralized. The Jedi Order was fractured and struggling with doubt about their role in galactic affairs. Most importantly, He had created the kind of fearful, divided galaxy that would provide maximum suffering when he finally performed his ultimate ritual. The aftermath left both governments dealing with internal problems. The Republic faced a crisis of confidence as citizens questioned whether their leaders could protect them from future Sith attacks. Many Jedi struggled with guilt over accepting a peace treaty that left the Sith in control of conquered worlds. Within the Sith Empire, some leaders questioned the Emperor's decision to stop fighting when victory was so close. Darth Malgus and others felt the war should have continued until the Republic was completely destroyed. But the Emperor's word was absolute, and no one dared openly challenge his judgment. The Emperor withdrew even further from public view after the treaty, leaving the Dark Council to manage the peace while he focused on preparing for the next phase of his plan. The Great Galactic War was over, but the patient Predator was already planning his next move in a game that spanned millennia. The galaxy had survived the return of the Sith, but it had paid a terrible price for that survival. Millions were dead, entire worlds were in ruins, and the balance of power had shifted dramatically in favor of the dark side. The Republic lived on, but it lived in fear of what the Emperor might do next. The Emperor vanished for a decade and let his enemies think he was gone forever. He was actually preparing to murder everyone in the galaxy. After the Treaty of Coruscant, the galaxy settled into an uneasy peace that felt more like a holding pattern than true stability. The Republic and Sith Empire watched each other constantly, engaging in espionage and proxy conflicts while officially maintaining the ceasefire. Both sides knew the peace wouldn't last, but nobody knew when or how it would end. During this Cold War period, the Emperor became almost completely invisible. Even his own people rarely saw or heard from him. The Dark Council assumed greater authority as their master withdrew deeper into seclusion. Some council members wondered if he had entered some kind of hibernation or meditation that would last for years. The truth was far more sinister. The Emperor was preparing for his ultimate ritual, the galaxy-wide version of what he had done on Nathema centuries earlier. He communed with dark forces and refined his plans to consume all life in the galaxy, transforming himself into a god of death ruling over an empty universe. While he planned in secret, the Emperor maintained his influence through hidden agents called the Children of the Emperor. These were sleeper spies scattered throughout the Republic, including some Jedi who had no idea their minds had been conditioned and linked to his will. Through these unwitting servants, he gathered intelligence and undermined his enemies without revealing his continued activity. Some children eventually discovered the truth about their conditioning and broke free, like Kira Carson, who served under Master Tol Braga. But many others remained under his control, creating paranoia and mistrust between the Jedi and Republic leadership, who could never be sure who was truly loyal. The Emperor's control was first seriously tested when Darth Barras, a member of the Dark Council, attempted to seize power by claiming to be the voice of the Emperor. This ambitious Sith Lord on the Dark Council devised a plan to eliminate the Emperor's voice and claim that position for himself. Barras lured the Emperor's current host body to the planet Voss, where a powerful dark side entity named Selmakor managed to trap the Emperor's essence in the mystical Nightmare Lands. For the first time in over a millennium, the Emperor was imprisoned by someone other than himself. The incident caused turmoil throughout the Sith Empire as news spread that their immortal master might be vulnerable after all. The Emperor was eventually freed by his second Emperor's wrath, who exposed Barris's treachery and broke Selmacor's prison. But the damage to his reputation was done, and more Sith began to question his absolute authority. By the end of the Cold War period, the Emperor was ready to implement his final plan. He began secretly gathering Sith cultists and followers to help perform the galaxy-wide ritual that would replicate Nathema's destruction on an unimaginable scale. He selected a remote space station as the site for this ultimate act of genocide. The Emperor's preparations didn't go completely unnoticed. The Jedi sensed disturbances in the Force that pointed to something terrible approaching. One particular Jedi Knight, who would later be known as the Hero of Tython, took it upon themselves to investigate and stop whatever the Emperor was planning. The Jedi Knight assembled a team that included some unexpected allies. Lord Scourge, who had served the Emperor faithfully for centuries while secretly waiting for the prophesied Jedi who could defeat his master, finally revealed his true loyalties. He joined the Knight's mission, believing this was the moment his long patience would finally pay off. The team infiltrated the Emperor's fortress on Dromund Kaas, fighting through layers of Imperial guards and Sith defenders. As they approached the throne room, the Emperor attempted to corrupt the Jedi Knight's mind, just as he had done to Revan and Malak centuries earlier. But this time, his mental assault failed. Whether through Revan's distant influence or the Knight's own strength of will, the Jedi resisted the Emperor's domination. The final battle took place in the Emperor's throne room, where the Hero of Tython faced what appeared to be the Sith Emperor himself. In reality, they were fighting one of his voices, but it wielded the full might of Vitiate's power. The duel was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. The Emperor unleashed attacks that shook the planet itself, while the Jedi Knight countered with the pure strength of the light side. In the end, the Hero of Tython prevailed. The Emperor's voice was struck down and disintegrated, apparently destroying the immortal Sith Lord forever. The galaxy-wide ritual was stopped moments before it could begin, saving billions of lives from a death they never saw coming. News of the Emperor's death spread quickly throughout both the Republic and the Sith Empire. The Republic celebrated the end of their greatest threat, while the Sith Empire fell into chaos as various leaders tried to seize power in the vacuum left by their supposedly immortal master. Darth Malgus declared himself the new emperor of a breakaway faction he called the True Empire, claiming the old emperor's ideals had died with him. Darth Malgus even seized control of the Empire's experimental stealth space station, the Ascendant Spear, as part of his rebellion. But internal resistance eventually defeated Malgus, and the Dark Council managed to maintain some stability by appointing figureheads like Empress Asina to preserve the illusion of continuity. But the Emperor wasn't truly dead. His essence had survived as a disembodied spirit, fleeing to Yavin 4 when his voice was destroyed. On that remote moon, rich with dark side energy, he entered a state of deep slumber within an ancient Massassi temple. His secret servants protected him while he slowly regenerated from the wounds inflicted by the Hero of Tython. Some who had been connected to the Emperor could still sense his presence. The children scattered throughout the Republic heard psychic whispers that drove some of them mad. These incoherent echoes were all that remained of his once overwhelming mental influence, but they proved he wasn't gone forever. During the Emperor's dormancy, other dark side threats emerged to fill the void. The Dread Masters, 6 ancient Sith lords who had been imprisoned by the Emperor were freed from a Republic prison on Belsavis. With their master absent, they launched their own campaign of terror, using fear as a weapon to corrupt entire armies. It took combined Republic and Imperial efforts to stop them. The galaxy enjoyed several years of relative peace, not knowing that the Emperor was slowly healing and planning his return. The dark shadow of Vitiate was dormant but not departed, and when he finally stirred again, his next move would reshape the entire galaxy. The galaxy thought the Emperor was finally dead, so they tried to resurrect him just to kill him again. Instead, they gave him exactly what he needed to destroy an entire world. A few years after the hero of Tython struck down the Emperor's voice, an extremist cult called the Order of Revan emerged from the shadows. What most people didn't know was that Revan himself had returned, but something had gone terribly wrong during his release from the Maelstrom prison. The experience had split his essence into light and dark halves. The light side became one with the Force, but the dark side lived on, consumed by an obsession to destroy the Emperor permanently. This dark Revan gathered followers from both the Republic and the Sith Empire, united by their shared hatred of Vitiate. They called themselves Revanites and developed a plan that seemed logical but was actually insane. They would resurrect the Emperor into a physical form, then kill him for good while he was vulnerable. The Revanites learned that the Emperor's spirit was hiding on Yavin 4, slowly regenerating in the ancient Massassi temples. They took control of the moon and built a massive device called the Temple of Sacrifice, which was built to harvest life energy through rituals of mass death to empower the Emperor's spirit. The plan terrified both the Republic and the Sith Empire. Neither side wanted the Emperor back, but they also couldn't allow Revan's fanatics to gain that kind of power. A joint strike force assembled on Yavin 4, including the hero of Tython, Sith Lord Lana Beniko, and Republic agent Theron Shan. The coalition managed to defeat Revan in battle outside the Temple of Sacrifice, but they were too late to stop what he had set in motion. The prolonged fighting and mass deaths on Yavin 4 created exactly the kind of energy the Emperor's dormant spirit needed. As Revan fell, the Emperor awakened, empowered by all the slaughter that had taken place. The Emperor's voice echoed across the battlefield through the Force, declaring that all the death and conflict belonged to him. This galaxy was his, and he would claim it once more. Then he departed Yavin 4, now fully awakened and restored in spirit, with no need for a physical body to exert his will. The coalition realized with horror that in trying to stop the Emperor, they had given him the fuel for his return. Revan finally reconciled his light and dark halves in those final moments, becoming one with the Force but warning that the Emperor had to be stopped wherever he appeared next. The Emperor didn't keep them waiting long. He chose Zeost, a heavily populated Imperial world that had once served as a Sith capital, for his next demonstration of power. In an act that defied comprehension, he mentally dominated almost the entire population of the planet simultaneously. Under his control, civilians and soldiers began slaughtering each other en masse. Lana Beniko and Theron Shan led a desperate team trying to break the Emperor's hold, but they were overwhelmed by the scale of his influence. Even when they briefly disrupted the Emperor's influence using high-frequency tech, it only temporarily slowed his mental control over the population. The Supreme Chancellor of the Republic made things worse by ordering a full invasion of Zeost. adding more chaos and more potential victims to feed the Emperor's growing power. With each death, his strength increased, making him even harder to stop. Finally, when he had absorbed enough energy from the planet's suffering, the Emperor enacted something unthinkable. In one apocalyptic burst, he consumed all life on Zeost. Every living being on the planet turned to ash instantly, their life force devoured to fully restore Vitiate's power. Zeost became a second Nathema, void of the Force and utterly lifeless. The horror of this act finally convinced even the Sith Empire that Vitiate was a threat to all existence. They officially renounced him, struck his name from their records, and declared him an enemy of the Empire. But Vitiate no longer cared about the Sith Empire. By consuming Zeost, he claimed to have moved beyond flesh and identity. He abandoned his failed project entirely and consolidated his consciousness back into his Valkorion identity in the unknown regions. Soon after Zeost's destruction, Valkorion was ready to reveal his second empire to the galaxy. His twin sons, Arkan and Thexan, launched massive attacks on both the Republic and the Sith Empire simultaneously. This third faction caught everyone completely off guard. The Eternal Fleet cut through defenses like they were made of paper. These automated warships attacked core worlds of both governments, including strikes on the Jedi Temple on Tython and the Sith Academy on Korriban. Valkorion had planned this reveal perfectly, hitting his enemies when they were weakest. Arkan disobeyed Valkorion's orders and entered battle, where he was gravely wounded. Thexan rescued him and helped complete the mission, earning trophies for their father. When they returned to Zakuul with trophies from their victories, they expected praise from their father. Instead, Valkorion met them with cold indifference. He turned away as Arkan, bleeding and injured, tried to present their accomplishments. This callous dismissal finally broke something in Arkan. He lunged at his father in rage, but Thexan used the Force to pull him back. The brothers began dueling in front of the Eternal Throne, lightsabers clashing in a fight neither had wanted. In his blind fury, Arkan struck a killing blow that took Thexan's life. As his twin brother fell dead, Arkan realized the horror of what he had done. Valkorion watched his son's grief with complete indifference, offering no comfort or consolation. This moment shattered whatever remained of their family bond and turned Arkan's love into pure hatred. Meanwhile, Darth Maul and a veteran Republic hero known as the Outlander assembled a task force to investigate this new threat. They suspected the mysterious immortal Emperor of Zakuul was actually the same Sith Emperor they had fought before. Their fleet was ambushed and destroyed by the Eternal Fleet, exactly as Valkorion had planned. Mar and the Outlander were captured and brought before him in the Spire throne room. When they recognized him as Vitiate, he casually confirmed their suspicions and offered them a chance to join his empire. Mar refused and attacked with a guard's weapon, but Valkorion killed him instantly with Force lightning. Then, with only Arkan and the Outlander remaining in the room, he made his offer of power once more. Before the Outlander could respond, Arkan chose that moment for his betrayal. He ignited his lightsaber and ran his father through, apparently killing Valkorion in front of his prisoner. But Valkorion had planned for this possibility. As his body died, his spirit immediately transferred into the Outlander's mind, hiding there while Arkan claimed the Eternal Throne. To prevent any complications, Arkan had the Outlander frozen in carbonite and blamed them for assassinating his father. For the next 5 years, Arkan ruled the Eternal Empire with his sister Valen as his enforcer. The galaxy submitted to Zakuul's power, while both the Republic and the Sith Empire paid tribute to avoid destruction. The frozen Outlander remained on display as Arkan's trophy, unaware that Valkorion's spirit was slowly preparing for its next move from within their mind. The Emperor had played the longest game in galactic history, and he was finally ready to collect his winnings. The Emperor spent 1,500 years conquering death, only to be destroyed by the family he had broken apart. His final defeat came not from lightsabers or armies, but from love turning against hate. After 5 years frozen in carbonite, the Outlander was finally rescued by Lana Beniko and the droid Z-0OM. Upon awakening, the Outlander discovered something terrifying. Valkorion was speaking inside their mind, revealing himself as an internal voice that had been hiding there since Arkan's apparent assassination of his father. Valkorion claimed he wanted to help defeat Arkan, offering to share his power if the Outlander would accept his guidance. During their escape from Zakuul, he proved his abilities by freezing time and protecting the Outlander from fatal danger. They stole the Gravestone, an ancient warship capable of fighting the Eternal Fleet, and fled with new allies, including Senya Tyrol, Arkan, and Valen's estranged mother. The Outlander established a hidden base on Odessin and began building an alliance to oppose the Eternal Empire. Throughout this time, Valkorion continued offering advice and power, presenting himself as a wise mentor who only wanted to stop Arkan from ruining everything he had built. The Outlander remained suspicious but sometimes accepted his help during critical moments. The Alliance scored victories against Arkan's forces, culminating in the Battle of Odessin, where Arkan launched a desperate assault to crush the rebellion. During his duel with the Outlander, Valkorion withdrew his presence entirely, forcing the Outlander to fight without his aid. This was a deliberate test, and when the Outlander defeated Arkan anyway, Valkorion declared they had passed and were ready for what came next. With Arkan dethroned, his sister Valen seized the Eternal Throne and proved even more sadistic than her brother. She removed the mental conditioning that had kept her powers in check and unleashed the full might of the Force. Valkorion pressed the Outlander to eliminate her, providing crucial assistance like trigger phrases that could temporarily incapacitate Valen by reactivating her childhood conditioning. The war against Valen escalated until she launched a final assault on Odessin with the entire Eternal Fleet. Despite her immense power, the Outlander managed to defeat and kill her. But Valen's death triggered the fleet's fail-safe programming. Without a ruler on the Eternal Throne, the automated ships began bombarding everything indiscriminately, including Zakuul itself. To stop the carnage, the Outlander traveled to Zakuul and sat on the Eternal Throne, accepting the mantle of Emperor to regain control of the fleet. The moment they seized command, Valkorion revealed his true intentions. He used the throne's ritual power to attack the Outlander's mind directly, attempting to possess their body completely. Valkorion had been grooming the Outlander all along, eliminating his dangerous children and strengthening his chosen vessel through trials and conflict. Now, he would hollow out the Outlander's consciousness and live again as an immortal ruler in their body. The final battle took place in a mental landscape inside the Outlander's mind. Valkorion appeared in his full dark glory, dredging up painful memories and nearly overwhelming his host. But the Outlander found unexpected allies in this psychic realm. Lord Dramath, Valkorion's long-dead father, emerged from a holocron the Outlander had obtained earlier. Arkan arrived in person, rescued by his mother and ready to confront his father. Even Valen's spirit appeared, freed by death from her father's influence. Together, they turned against the Emperor, who had manipulated and destroyed their family. The Outlander used Dramath's holocron to weaken Valkorion and sever his control over his children. In desperation, they invoked the same trigger phrase that had controlled Valen, and astonishingly, it worked on Valkorion himself. The Emperor had unknowingly made himself vulnerable to his own technique. Senya Tiral materialized in the mindscape and struck her husband with a lightsaber, declaring he had betrayed his family one time too many. Arkan and Valen's spirit helped pin Valkorion down while he screamed that he was a god and they were nothing without him. The Outlander delivered the final blow, obliterating Valkorion's essence with pure force power. The Emperor's spirit erupted in dark energy and vanished forever. His hold over the Outlander was broken, his family was freed, and his plans were ended. The immortal Emperor who had cheated death for 15 centuries was finally destroyed. But one last contingency remained. The Emperor's original body on Nathema harbored a final splinter of his essence as a safeguard. When Valkorion died, this plague ritual activated. Lord Scourge and Jedi Kira Carson, who had been hunting the Emperor's remains, destroyed his original corpse, but the released spirit possessed Grand Master Satil Shan and several other Jedi. After awakening from year-long comas, Scourge and Kira warned the Alliance commander about this final threat. The possessed Jedi were tracked to a drifting ghost ship where Tenebrae's 3 personas attempted to reconstitute themselves. In a collective mindscape, all of the Emperor's past victims and enemies gathered for one last battle. Mitra Surik, Revan, Satele Shan, Darth Mar, and the Outlander confronted Tenebrae's spirit, with Scourge aiding from outside the vision. The Emperor proclaimed he had shed his weaknesses and would not fail again, but his opponents knew his true vulnerability. His pride and fear of death had always been his greatest weakness. In the final confrontation, the Alliance commander and gathered legends overpowered Tenebrae's spirit. The Emperor shattered and turned to dust, dying the same way he had killed so many others. Darth Vitiate was utterly erased from existence. His 1500-year reign of terror finally ended. The galaxy breathed easier with Tenebrae gone, but his legacy remained carved in dead worlds and broken civilizations. He had orchestrated the Mandalorian Wars, the Jedi Civil War, and the Great Galactic War. Planets like Nathema and Ziost stood as monuments to his evil, forever void of life and hope. Even thousands of years later, Sith lords like Darth Plagueis would study his methods and marvel at how close he had come to truly conquering death. But in the end, the boy who tortured his mother became the monster who destroyed himself. The Emperor's hunger for immortality became the very thing that ensured his destruction would be absolute and final.